Happy Tuesday, everyone, and thank you for joining this week's edition of the Wolverine Live Recruiting Show. Airs at 7 p.m. every Tuesday on YouTube. We'll be breaking down the latest news on the Michigan recruiting front, which the team has begun hosting recruits on campus now that spring camp practice is underway. A little housekeeping first for a full updated list on the 2025, 2026, and 2027 recruits who are expected to be in Ann Arbor over the next several weeks. Be sure to head on over to the Wolverine.com, where EJ Holland and myself are adding new targets almost daily. You can receive unlimited access to all of the recruiting content that EJ and I post for $1 for your first month. Second, this episode of the Wolverine. Oh, you're back.
Hey, just got here from Richmond. So, but you can keep doing the read, Zach. I always do it. So you can pump up the magazine and the channel and anything you want to pump up.
Absolutely. Second, first to our business. This episode is brought to you by the Wolverine Live recruiting show commemorative issue magazine. It's a monthly subscription that the Wolverine puts out, but we have a commemorative issue of the national championship, 148 pages that will take you through an in-depth journey on Michigan's 15-0 run last season and out to its first outright national championship since 1948. Articles published by the Wolverine staff, including EJ and myself, Chris Ballas, Anthony Broom, Clayton Safey, John Borden, dive into a comprehensive game coverage, in-depth features, as well as stunning photography, insightful columns, stats, and much more. If you receive your copy over at thewolverineondemand.com, 5% of all of our sales will go to the Champion Circle NIL Fund. So a great way to support Michigan student athletes. But, obviously you can explain why you're a little late. I was going to explain it, but you got here just in time to explain yourself.
Just a couple of minutes late. It's been that type of day. I was out in Richmond, Virginia today, seeing top 100 cornerback Shamari Earls. I'll be making the rounds in Virginia and up into the DMV. This week, new Michigan DB coach Lamar Morgan has been pressing hard for defensive backs around the country. He has Michigan back in the mix with a few targets that previously eliminated Michigan. Earls actually released his top 10 this past week, so last week, and did not include Michigan, but he had a great conversation with Morgan over the weekend. Now Michigan is in the mix to receive a visit. You can see Earl is the top 100 guy by On3, the number 62 overall prospect in the country. And man, he checked the boxes. He's listed at 6'1", 175. And we always joke about the EJ height test because I'm 6'1", and a lot of recruits fail because they're not really 6'1". Shamari was 6'2", 195. Ran a 10.8 100 meter as a sophomore. Hopes to run a 10.6 here as a junior. But, man, just a great combination of height, length, speed. But we have a ton of coverage on DBs and Lamar Morgan's pursuits as he resets the board over on the Wolverine.com. But today we're going to talk about a different new assistant, and that is Tony Alford coming over from Ohio State. So a nice steal from a rival for new head coach Sharon Moore. Zach, I guess I'll throw it back to you. What was your initial reaction when Michigan made the Alford hire official?
Kind of jaw-dropping when you and I first heard about it, when the Wolverine first heard about it. Obviously, I think the storyline, I think it's just, enthralling just because Michigan plucked a coach from a school that's its arch rival. I mean, Tony Alford's been at Ohio State since 2015, the exact same tenure as Jim Harbaugh was at Michigan. This is a guy, Michigan kind of hit a home run here, right? They had to replace a elite developer and an alumni and really a guy with legend status at Michigan and former running backs coach Mike Hart. He departs a little bit before spring camp practice, right? So moving in swift to pluck in a guy with, immense experience on the recruiting trail, not just as a developer of men, but also just a guy of evaluator and a guy who can find true, men and players. I mean, I think when you look at Tony Alford's background, there's a couple of things that stand out. One, the guys he was able to pluck, and sign. J.K. Dobbins comes to mind. Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams, elite top 100 running backs that, or soon or have had an NFL career. Now, when you look at Michigan's situation, Mike Hart leaves a little bit after National Signing Day. So Michigan landed 2 running backs this past cycle. Jordan Marshall, top 100 guy, reigning Mr. Ohio Football Award winner. Micah Kalpana of Bishop Gorman, known for his versatility and, playing on such arguably and objectively, the reigning high school national champions. Both of them have said to you and I on many occasions how much were looking forward to working under Hart, learning under him, having him as a mentor. So when his departure came, you as a Michigan fan, you'd expect, Michigan brings in a guy in order for the upcoming signees to be equally as excited. And if you look at Tony Alford, he was the one who recruited Jordan Marshall to Ohio State. They had a relationship before Jordan committed to Michigan in March of last year. Alford was a big reason in why Jordan had Ohio State in his top 4. And, speaking to the Wolverine, he was, the relationship, I don't think stopped. They don't stop communication. And, I feel like, Jordan's quote of, having a plan, and that plan was to play for Michigan. Now that plan is to be coached by Tony Alford. When you look at Micah Kalpana, I don't think there was a pre-existing relationship, but, the track record speaks for itself in terms of what Alford has done at Ohio State. And a guy like Micah Kalpana, who has a chip on his shoulder to prove that he can be a 3-down tailback for a school that prides itself on running on the ball. That's a big deal for a kid like him. So overall, I feel like this is a really, really outstanding hire, especially given the timing and, for Sherrone Moore finalizing his first staff, getting a veteran guy, a guy who's proven himself on the recruiting trail. That's huge, especially considering that Sherrone Moore is going to have an aggressive nature and he wants to have his assistant coaches have the same kind of attitude. And Tony Alford provides that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm a big fan of the Tony Alford hire from a pure recruiting perspective. Like I said last week, look, Mike Hart is a high-level coach, an elite coach. Obviously, he's a Michigan legend. So when you look at him in terms of what he did as a player and what he accomplished as an assistant coach, I think Mike Hart is tremendous. But when it came to Mike Hart on the recruiting trail, he was poor. He was very subpar. You have a program in Michigan that runs the ball at will. So you have an easier sell than Tony Alford had at Ohio State, right? Where it's a very pass happy offense. Mike Hart was only able to land one top 200 recruit, and that was Jordan Marshall in his 3 cycles here. And, I caught some flack on that on social media because someone was like, oh, well, Colt Cabana was number 202. Well, that's not top 100. Learn math. It's not top 200. And I was being generous by saying top 200. I could have just said top 100 or top 150. It's Michigan. That should be the expectation. And Colt Cabana, I'm a fan of Colt Cabana, so this is no Cabana disrespect. We've always been fans of Colt Cabana, but that wasn't a major recruiting win. My point by saying top 200 was more to say one major recruiting win, because Mike Hart didn't beat out anybody for Colt Cabana. Michigan State cooled on him, which I know Michigan State says that quite a bit, but they actually did in that situation. And there was no real competition. I mean, Zach could have landed Colt Cabana. I could have landed Colt Cabana. He was always going to Michigan, right? So when we look at Mike Hart, he had one major recruiting win, whether that's top 100, top 200, even top 300, top 500. I don't care what number you want to pick. There was one major recruiting win for Mike Hart. For Tony Alford, he has a long track record of big recruiting wins and going after the big fish out of region. He landed the number 1 running back in the country a few cycles ago in Travion Henderson. He dipped down into Texas and pulled J.K. Dobbins. While I was on the Texas beat, Dobbins grew up in a small town not too far away from Austin. He was a big Texas fan. he was considered a lock to go to Texas, and Tony Alford went down there and shocked everybody and landed Dobbins. And like I said, he landed Travion Henderson as well. He's landed several other top 200 backs. I believe it was, what was it, 9, I think, that I counted during his time at Ohio State. And then even, predating his time at Ohio State, at Notre Dame, he had success landing top 200 backs as well. So, yeah, I mean, he's a guy that's going to be much more aggressive on the recruiting trail than Mike Hart was. He has several ties throughout the country. He's a guy that, has recruited well in Florida. He's recruited well on the East Coast in Virginia and North Carolina. He obviously has plenty of Ohio ties and is a Ohio native. So, yeah, I mean, I think that Tony Alford is a big upgrade over Mike Hart on the recruiting trail. Whether he's a big upgrade as a coach, that's another debate for a different show. But when we're talking about a pure recruiter, I think Tony Alford is, as good as you can get. It's going to be tough to be a better coach than Mike Hart. There aren't many better coaches out there. But I do think that Tony Alford was a great hire for Sharon Moore. And I just think he's going to be aggressive overall. I think that he's a guy that's going to stay on underclassmen. He's a guy that's going to recruit different areas, the areas I just mentioned. Those are things that Mike Hart didn't do. He's going to travel as much as his peers, something else that Mike Hart didn't do. And he's going to be a guy that's just really out there, really personable. And I get that Mike Hart did a great job of developing guys on the roster. I get he did a great job as a coach. I get he's a legend, but you have to separate those things and look at him as a pure recruiter. And he just wasn't very aggressive. He didn't stay in contact with the underclassmen. He didn't help out the other assistant coaches. And that's a big thing with Tony Alford too. When you look at Tony Alford's resume, he helped land quite a few non-running back recruits that were ranked really high. Mike Hart didn't help out with any other positions. The most disappointing thing about Mike Hart is this is a guy that was a legend and a guy that had one of the best rushing attacks in the country, coach for a team that ran the ball at will, as I said, and a guy that was an elite developer. He had everything to sell, all reason to take pride in pitching, playing running back for the University of Michigan, following in his footsteps. And he didn't. He was just lazy with it, man. And I don't know how people can keep giving this guy excuses. I get it. Great coach, great player, but not an elite recruiter. And I think you can get that out of Tony Alford. Now, obviously, Sharon Moore is going to have to command a lot from him as an on-the-field coach, but from a recruiting perspective, don't think you can get much better than Tony Alford. So let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. There's a 5-star visitor this week, Andrew Babaloa, offensive tackle out of Kansas, home state of new head coach Sharon Moore, the number 14 overall recruit in the country. Zach, this is a kid that you've been following closely. You've been in contact with Babaloa. Just kind of preview his visit. What kind of shot does Michigan have? Because right now, unlike other 5-stars, an obscure team like Kansas State is the leader on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. So is Michigan a real contender here?
You would have to say yes on the count that if you're an offensive lineman, why wouldn't you want to go to Michigan? 2 Joe Moore Awards in the past 3 years. You have your head coach, previously a coach on the offensive line that was responsible for those Joe Moore Awards, and your head coach played at the formerly Power 5 level at Oklahoma. And considering Babaloa's, case, Moore and Babaloa are both Kansas natives. Babaloa, he is a suburban Kansas City native, so take it for what it is. What up, Corey? He is, right outside the border. But still, that connection has meant quite a bit when you look at the 2025 recruiting class and those top targets in the state of Kansas. The top 6 recruits this cycle from Kansas all have Michigan offers and all saw Sharon Moore stop by their school during the January contact period. With Babaloa, he's grown up in Kansas, but technically he was born in Metro Detroit. He was born in Bloomfield Township, 45 minutes north of Ann Arbor. But when he moved to the Kansas City area when he was, young, he was going through the system of the school. He's gotten close with a player that's currently expected to enroll at Michigan, and that's Andrew Sprague, the 2024 signee and an All-American. They know each other from the AAU circuit. But, this is a kid who got an offer over the fall. Sherrone Moore personally offered. They've been building up communication. A visit this upcoming Friday will be, his first time ever in Ann Arbor. There was talks or just inklings or him hoping to possibly get up there for the Ohio State game or during the January contact period. But, his opportunity to see, Moore at the helm, leading an entire program, and then also seeing how Grant Newsome, newly promoted offensive line coach, how he can do in terms of, bestowing his philosophies, his teachings, his own experiences playing on the offensive line at Michigan. So, I think this is huge. Obviously, not just because he's the only 5-star right now on the On3 industry ranking to visit so far, or slated to visit so far, but this is a true offensive tackle. If you look, I know we're going to dive deep in this later, but if you dive deep on offensive tackle targets this cycle compared to offensive linemen who are projected to move down inside, to guard or center, the numbers can't be compared. There are a few guys outside of Babaloa that Michigan is in true contention for. There's Babaloa. There's Jack Lange out of Eureka, Missouri, who's also expected to visit later this month. He comes from the same school as Hassan Haskins, but the numbers are very low compared to interior guys. So, being in the top contention for a true 5-star like Babaloa is monumental. And I think it's imperative that this upcoming Friday visit, is knocked out of the park. There's also, Michigan obviously has competition. Tennessee and Texas A&M have official visits lined up with Babaloa. I'm sorry. No, Tennessee has an official visit scheduled with Babaloa. He has upcoming visits to A&M, Missouri, and some others, Oklahoma. But, there's a lot to sell for a 5-star offensive tackle, not just on-field development, but, you're coming into a school that celebrates offensive linemen. You're noticed more beyond just when you make a mistake. I feel like, this past year, the offensive linemen were some of the more popular guys on campus. So going to a school where your personality or your experience is not seen as just, when you make a mistake, your impact is beyond what you can do, in between on the trenches. So it's going to be a very important visit, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens afterwards.
Yeah, I think when you look at that competition, it's kind of wide open with Babaloa. We were talking a little bit about this when I was on the road before the show, and I kind of asked Zach before the show what he thought his chances were and who the main competitors were, and it's really hard to break down a top list for Babaloa. It seems like he's truly open, and being a Kansas guy, he's not exactly in the South where he's going to lean towards the SEC. He's not in Florida, which I guess is also the South, but he's not going to lean towards those Florida schools. He's not a Texas kid, so it seems like he's kind of just he's in a state that doesn't normally produce 5-star level guys. So I'm interested to see, does NIL become a huge factor? Will the, Georgias and Oregons of the world get super, super involved? Will this turn into a, more Michigan, Oklahoma type of battle where it's, Midwest and Great Plains schools? I think this recruitment could go in a lot of different directions. But the thing here is, Sherrone Moore being from Kansas, I think gives them an in. Zach talked about some of the other ties. And I think Grant Newsome just does a fantastic job of recruiting offensive linemen and building personal connections. I think Newsome has a chance to develop into a really, really good recruiter on this staff. He already is, but I think he has a chance to, be a high level, national level recruiter. So, I think the chance is there with Babaloa. I don't think this is like a David Sanders situation. So, David Sanders is obviously a 5-star tackle. And me and Zach both mentioned on this show that we were very pessimistic about Michigan's chances despite his ties there. We always felt that one was going to go south. With Babaloa, it's just so open that I think a strong impression this week could really move the needle and put Michigan really, really high on his mind and, return or guarantee a return summer official visit. So I think another thing that Zach mentioned that I wanted to hit on is the lack of tackle targets. I think Babaloa is such an important recruit because you already had David Sanders eliminate Michigan. You already had, some other high-level offensive tackles not really express a ton of interest in Michigan. You've had other targets like Will Black, who was a bad loss to Notre Dame. You had Matty Augustine also commit to Notre Dame. So you've had guys just go elsewhere or leave Michigan out of their top schools. So that tackle board is dwindling. I talked about the great job that Grant Newsome's doing, but I think you have to look at the board and say, man, he's doing a great job with interior offensive linemen because there are so many high-level interior offensive linemen on the board. I think Michigan's actually having a hard time deciding who they're going to actually accept a commitment from on the interior of the offensive line. But the offensive tackle board, there aren't a lot of names there. So guys like Babaloa, I think, or a guy like Babaloa would be just such a massive land to pair with a lot of these interior guys that are showing a lot of interest, whether it's Avery Gash or Michael Carroll or Hardy Watts, a lot of on 300, high-level 4-star prospects showing interest in Michigan that are interior guys. But I think Newsome needs to find a big-time tackle, a true tackle as well. Anything else you want to add about Babaloa before we move on, Zach?
No, I think we hit it on everything.
Cool. Corey G says, you do great work, EJ. Just relax. The coaches are going to get who works for them. I will not relax. That is such a terrible take. I'm not going to relax and sit here and try to give credit to Mike Hart for his poor efforts on the recruiting trail. He should have done better if he didn't want criticism. And who's working out? Because CJ Stokes didn't work out. Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum were both Jay Harbaugh guys. So we never actually got to see Mike Hart coach his own players. Now, I think Jordan Marshall is going to be a really good player. I have hope for Cole Cabana, but we never got to see Mike Hart, coach guys that he kind of settled on or took early. But my point isn't even that Mike Hart wasn't landing the big fish. I mean, that is part of my point. The bigger point was the lack of effort and pride on the recruiting trail. It's, you can't make excuses for it. It was bad. It was poor effort is my biggest problem with Mike Hart. And I don't think you'll really have that problem with Tony Alford. So I won't calm down. And if you're a Michigan fan and you support someone doing half their job, there's something wrong with you. Get out of here. As a Michigan fan, you should want a Michigan legend all over the place, pushing the university, taking pride in recruiting, talking about his playing days and how he can develop you, not sitting around settling. Like, get out of here. You should want maximum effort from every guy. Ron Bellamy's at a disadvantage recruiting wide receivers to this offense. You don't see him doing half his job and mailing it in on the recruiting trail. He's a Michigan man. He takes pride in being a Michigan man. Grant Newsome takes pride in being a Michigan man. These guys are just out there preaching their love for Michigan, and you have a guy in Mike Hart who's just mailing it in. Get out of here. I'm not going to calm down. Now, we will move to our next topic, and that is, look at Zach. He's like, God damn it, EJ. We will move on to our next topic, and that is weekend visitors. We talked about Babaloa. Zach, give me the recruit that you were, and we do have a full ongoing visitors preview that Zach updates throughout the spring over at thewolverine.com. And actually right now is a good time to remind you guys, if you want more premium content as far as Michigan recruiting, you can find it over at thewolverine.com for just $1 for 1 month, and Zach and I are, hitting the road again and all that good stuff now that the staff is back in place. And also like this video. We have more than 120 people watching, so make sure to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel for free. And if you want a question answered on tonight's show, make sure to leave a super chat. That money goes directly to our travel budget so we can continue to see recruits across the country. But Michigan is hosting a handful of recruits this weekend. Like I said, we talked about Babalola. Give me another guy that you're the most excited about coming into Ann Arbor this weekend.
I'll say he's the most excited and the most important. 4-star offensive lineman Avery Gash out of Birmingham, grows an in-stater. Again, a Metro Detroit native. Actually, I think Birmingham is right next to Bloomfield Township. This is a kid who is coming off 3 game day visits to Michigan this past season. He was at Indiana, Purdue, and the Ohio State wins. He was also at the barbecue last year. He took in a late spring personalized tour. He got his offer during the Penn State game in the 2022 season. He is the number 2 overall prospect in the state right now. As an offensive lineman, we talk about how many interior projected interior types there are on the board. I mean, this is priority number 1 for Michigan. This is a job that Newsome and Moore are tag teaming on a daily basis. Gash heard from Jerome Moore the day that Jerome Moore was officially hired as head coach in January. Both Moore and Newsome stopped by Groves separately to meet with Gash and his coaches and his family at the school during the contact period. Now, this spring, not only is he going to be there on Friday, on March 22nd, he's also going to be there April 7th. So 2 spring visits locked in. Quite frankly, I probably wouldn't be surprised before the official visit slate, he gets back there a 3rd time. He has an open invite from the staff to be there anytime he wants. His mean streak, his ability to bend, his flexibility in terms of, kicking out as a tackle or sliding down as a guard, his versatility has had high impressions on the coaching staff. This is a guy who pretty much has seen everything that Michigan can provide. Now it's a matter of seeing how Moore and the new roles, how Newsome is in command, and then Jerome Moore at the top. There's a lot. I've said this before on the Wolverine. I've said this before on social media. I know you have a prediction for Michigan. I do not, because he's not expected to commit this spring. He's going to do it after his June official visits. That's why he's arguably the most important guy, because you can't let him leave the area, let alone go to East Lansing, where he is a legacy. Now, since he won't commit until those official visits, that's left a lot of schools to continue recruiting him, prioritizing him, staying in contact. We've mentioned Michigan State, but Ohio State, Penn State, Georgia, Wisconsin, USC. This is a kid who's really kept an open approach to his recruitment, but Michigan is pulling out every stop and every resource to ensure that he signs this cycle. I feel like back-to-back, great out of the park, move the needle spring visits, this Friday and April 7th. I feel like that can put Michigan in pole position to be the leader once the June officials happen. And then that's where you can lock it in. But overall, I feel like this is the next step in order for Michigan to secure its position to land a guy with a lot, like I said, a lot of versatility, a lot of weight gains, healthy weight gains. I've seen him in game once and a lot of camps, and he moves really well for his size. So he's a really priority recruit, and like I said, he's top priority for the offensive line. So that's my guy for this weekend.
Cool. I will I will talk about my guy in a second, but let's go back to Corey G, who says, who is defending him? I have patience and you don't. Patience for what? This man had 3 cycles to get going on the recruiting trail. He did a tremendous job of recruiting Jordan Marshall and gave great effort for like 3 months. Remember that one time period when Mike Hart like traveled to Texas and he was hitting the road, and I was like, look at Mike Hart. And I gave Mike Hart his props. I gave Mike Hart his props when he was traveling. I gave Mike Hart his props when he landed Jordan Marshall. But as soon as he landed Jordan Marshall, this man went back to his old ways and he mailed it in, and he was being lazy. And then Corey G says Zach should take over the show because EJ acts like a kid. No, I act like an adult, and I look at the situation for what it is, which is Mike Hart is a legend, amazing player, great elite coach, elite developer. But as a recruiter, he was poor. And it's okay to say that. It's okay to say he was a bad recruiter, but he was a tremendous coach and a tremendous player. You're acting like a little kid, fanning over Mike Hart, making excuses for Mike Hart. Get out of here, man. Stop that. Let's go down to John A. Schultz, who says, if EJ acts like a kid, Zach has the culinary taste of a kid. Little Caesars, for example. I told Zach to try the new Little Caesars viral sensation live on this show, but he did not come through. What are they, Zach? The pizza puffs? Have you had them yet?
No. I mean, no, like, I mean, I want to try them, but look, man, I'm down 40 pounds. Like, if I start getting Caesars on the regular, I can't, like, it's going to go back to being fat Zach, like, all over again.
Oh, wow, man. Laying off the Little Caesars. I will say that Zach and I spoke on the way back from Richmond, and he informed me that he's never been to a dine-in theater. He only goes to dingy, rundown theaters. And he says that I'm too bougie since I only go to dine-in theaters. So let us know in the comments, dine-in theaters versus dingy, rundown theaters that Zach goes to, where he gets crappy popcorn and iced teas while I get premium food delivered to me, milkshakes. I told Zach they have alcohol, so he needs to go. He said he was going to give it a whirl for Monkey Man next month.
Yeah, I'll try it. Okay. I'll try it.
All right. Let's go. I think, okay, last call for super chats. Make sure to get your super chats in. Also like this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm going to go a little bit out of the box and talk about the recruit I'm most excited about for this weekend, and that's Noah Grubb. So I'm going down into the 2026 recruiting class, and Noah Grubbs is one of many targets that Kirk Campbell is working on for 2026. You know, the good thing for Campbell is he landed Carter Smith early, and now he has several targets in 2026. He has the luxury of being able to really focus in on the underclassmen. He doesn't have to worry about Carter. Carter's locked in. So now he can really go after all these 2026s. And the great thing about Campbell as well, which I will say that I didn't initially buy into Kirk Campbell because he didn't have a lot of experience as a recruiter. But this shows, I think Kirk Campbell is a great example that if you give maximum effort on the recruiting trail, you can be a good recruiter. And I think Kirk Campbell has really given so much effort on the recruiting trail. He's all over the place. I think he saw every 2026 quarterback target and guys that didn't even have offers during the contact period in January. He was all over the place. And Noah Grubbs is a very realistic target on that quarterback board. So remember when Michigan did the all your eggs in one basket approach, that's completely gone. And Campbell's focused on several different players. But I think Grubbs is a guy that's very high on the board. He's shown a lot of interest in Michigan. This will be his third or fourth visit. Third visit. He visited twice last year, including for the game against Ohio State. So this will mark his third visit, and he's just a 2026, and he's out of region. He's from Florida. So making 3 trips from Florida shows just how interested he is in Michigan. He doesn't mind the pro-style offense. I think he's looking forward to seeing what Campbell does as an OC. But I think Grubbs is a good fit for the offense. Actually, he's more than just a game manager as well. He has a really strong arm. I got to see him live at the Battle Miami 7-on-7 event this offseason. Really nice built kid, 6'4", 210 pounds. Like I said, a strong arm. He's accurate. He's mechanically sound as well. He has a great trainer out there in the state of Florida, Balin Trujillo. So, yeah, I think that Noah Grubbs could very well be the 2026 quarterback commit. You see Notre Dame, Florida, and some other schools are heavily involved. But I think, again, Grubbs is a very, very realistic target. And it's exciting that Kirk Campbell is getting so many of these elite 26 quarterbacks on campus. Like I wrote yesterday when On3 dropped its 2026 rankings, that Campbell was in on all these guys, but he's also gotten them to campus, whether it's Jared Curtis or Noah Grubbs or Will Griffin or Jonas Williams. Like all these guys have already visited. So I think Campbell's doing a fantastic job. I'm excited about Grubbs as a prospect. I'm excited about the job Campbell's doing with a lot of these underclassmen signal callers. And you look at Grubbs, and I mean, he's a top 150 recruit on the industry ranking. Rivals actually ranked him top 50. On3 a little lower on him, but I think he's a guy that's going to continue to rise up the rankings for On3 as they see him a little bit more. And, what a great job by Campbell if he's able to go into Florida again and land another top quarterback out of there like he did with Carter Smith. All right. That about does it, guys. I think that's it. Oh, well, account 22 says dine-in theater. Interesting. Do people not know what dine-in theaters are? Like, what's wrong with these people? I mean,
it's not a thing.
It is a thing. Like, okay, I told Zach that in Texas, we have these things called Alamo Draft Houses. They are amazing. In Chicago, we had Studio Movie Grill, also great. There's some different ones here in Virginia now. I mean, how do you guys not know about dine-in theaters? Do you guys just go and get crappy popcorn and ices? Like what? Like the game has completely changed. Like this isn't the 90s anymore. Like you can actually go and get a full service meal.
Then go get food from carryout and watch it from home. Like
I want to watch it at home. I want the whole theater experience. I want to sit in the recliner chair. I want the massive
grill, hot dogs, microwave, chicken tenders, mashed potatoes, and bags. Like
Zach literally asked me if I was carrying like a bag of frozen Tyson chicken tenders into the theater, and like that's not what it is. So get out of here. What? Look at John A. Schultz. He says, EJ, food at the movie theater is as bad as food at a strip club. Now, I've never been to a strip club. I'm married and would never do such a thing. And Zach is not. And apparently he's been to many. And he told me that the food is great. So I don't know if it's a step down from the strip club. I don't know, because Zach pumped up the food at the strip club. So I think he would enjoy. I think he would enjoy the movie theater food. But I think we're getting off the rails here. I definitely don't want to tell you about Zach wanting to go hunt hogs and kill entire families, which was a different conversation. But anyway, that's it for tonight's show. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, also subscribe to the Wolverine.com for $1 for 1 month. And I will be here tomorrow for our Q&A show to answer all of your questions. And Zach will apparently be out, killing defenseless animals. See you next week or tomorrow.